Welcome to another edition of the Food Systems Podcast, brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. Hello everyone, I'm Alex Turk. Good to be with you again for this episode where we're joined by Justin Rose from Deere Company, who are a supporting partner of the forum. And Justin will be on a panel this year talking about AI and the food system, and we'll talk more about that later. But first, welcome Justin. Hello.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure to be here. Happy to join you.
Well, Justin, you're responsible for Deere's European, African, and Asian markets in worldwide agriculture and turf, developing tech solutions and equipment. You're based out of Mannheim in Germany, where you're sitting today, originally from Minnesota, and you've had many years' experience also in management consultancy. And Justin, it's great to talk to you because with all of that resume, it feeds into your understanding of data as a second crop. John Deere collects huge amounts of information from your farm machinery and software, and that farmland data, well, it has a yield, it has a value. So specifically first, how do farmers tangibly benefit from that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think maybe it's worthwhile starting with the base fundamentals. There's often questions around who owns the data, who should profit from the data. And we've been very clear at John Deere for many years now that the data is the farmers. For us, data and digital agriculture only works if it's built on trust, transparency, and clear control by our customers. We have some platforms. One is called John Deere Operations Center. An Operations Center is used to help farmers aggregate the data of record for their farm across all the different parts of their operations so that they can draw insights from it and use it to create value in their operations. Now, for us, critically, data is not extracted from the farmers. It's simply stored on the platform and used then to create value and ultimately help them make better decisions, whether that's getting more yield, reducing cost, or streamlining their operations. Now, I think that I used the word value a moment ago, and that's a critical word to really double click on. Ultimately, that data has to generate a tangible return for the farmer. There's many different partners in the ecosystem that provide services. And part of our positioning at John Deere with Operations Center is we want to make certain that our farmers, our customers can work with whoever they choose to work with. And so if they want to give that data to another partner, they can. If they want to one day restrict that permission from a partner they had previously granted it to, they can do that as well. And ultimately, if they want to delete the data from our platform altogether, they're willing, or we're willing to do that. They're free to do that whenever they would like. And so it is very much a second crop. Fundamentally, I think we have a great responsibility as a partner of that customer to ultimately help them get the most that they can out of that data.
You talked about streamlining operations there as one of the things that they can get from it. I mean, tell me a little bit more about the sort of things, because I know you visit farms all over, the sort of ways in which that value really does come to life.
Yeah, it starts at a really basic and simple level. It's things like if you have a far-flung operation, let's say many of our customers will have 1 or 2,000 hectares. They may be seeding in one part of the farm and have the tendering tanks in another place. They may have a combine running during the harvest season across a broad geographic area, multiple fields that might be tens of kilometers apart, and they need to run fuel operations. And so simply being able to understand where things are, what the status of the assets are, can help them make really, really practical decisions in real time that help them streamline operations. Then it gets more complicated and even more exciting, I would say, from there. We have technology that uses aggregated data sets and pictures of weeds to be able to see and spray. So identify what is weed versus plant and only spray the weed. We can talk more about that in detail, but that's something that is very much value creating both from a sustainability standpoint and frankly from less chemical usage on the field. So there's a direct ROI for the customers.
So, on the panel at the forum on the 14th of April, you're going to be talking about how AI can redefine what's possible, not just for farming in a smart way, so farmers can benefit and profit, as we've been discussing, but also what helps to be climate smart and nature positive. And of course, data informs AI, machine learning, algorithms, and predictive tools. So, how does it help the wider food system?
Yeah, great question. Let me go to the See and Spray example I was using. So maybe just for the audience, a bit more detail. If you think about a sprayer traditionally, it looks sort of like a tractor with a huge tank on the back of it and a long boom that stretches across. It'll drive across the field and basically spray everything with herbicide in one application to reduce weed pressure. And that's important because weeds are a real problem for farmers. They rob plants of sunlight, of nutrients, of moisture, and they actually reduce yield and ultimately make the crop harder to manage. All of this says that you have to put more inputs in to get the same level of output, which is inherently not the most sustainable approach. So what See and Spray does is See and Spray across that long boom. In many cases, it's 30, 36 or more meters wide. There's cameras that are located all across that. As the sprayer goes across the field, it looks at each individual piece of foliage and decides, is it a plant or is it a weed? And then it will only spray the weeds. Now, in our trials, and actually now more than millions of acres in real world conditions, what we found is that you can save 60 to 70% of the chemicals that you would otherwise put down on the field. That's really cool. And I think that, leads to a much more climate positive, more sustainable ecosystem. Now, why AI? I think that's a great question. And AI is often seen as makes people a bit nervous. They don't know what the future is going to look like. Maybe it's more of a threat than it is a positive attribute. But I think people underestimate and misunderstand the scale of agriculture. So often when I give a talk like this, I share a single fact, and that single fact is in Europe, in small grain cereals and oilseed production, there are around 23 trillion, that's with a T, 23 trillion individual weeds that must be found and killed every year in Europe alone. Now, if you think about doing that at the scale of European agriculture, and then you start to question, well, where are they distributed? Well, typically, per square meter, you might find 20 to 50 total weeds, but those weeds only exist on 1 to 5% of the total arable land. And so you're seeking this vast number of weeds and you want to kill them, but you don't want to spray 95 to 99% of the land with chemicals. You just want to focus it where it matters. To do that, you have to actually work at a superhuman level. A human being cannot process at the scale of European agriculture, um, finding all of those weeds and individually killing them, and therefore you need AI. And therefore, AI is positive for overall European agriculture and for sustainability in agriculture.
Yeah, I mean, precision agriculture is something that we talk a lot about at the forum. So, really interesting to hear the ways in which you can see it coming to life in the field. You were very clear, Justin, to say that the data belongs with the farmer, and the idea of who should capture and own data, because obviously you will benefit from it too, but should it be the technology provider or should it be the farm owner and the landowner? To be very clear that you feel that that's too binary a framework for the debate.
Yeah, I think it is too binary for the debate. As we produce and we have the ability to leverage some of that data to create more products and services for our customers, obviously there's significant investment. We as a company are investing more than $2 billion a year, not just in data and data-based products, but across our whole portfolio. And of course, for us to continue to do that, we need to be able to earn a return. But the key is that the farmer's in control. Ultimately, the data is the farmers. If they don't want John Deere to have that data, they can delete it. If they want a different partner to also have access to it, they have control over that. And so ultimately, we at John Deere, any other company in this space, Our job is to try and create a product or a service that a customer finds valuable that they want to pay us money for. And if we do that well and we make a good business, then I think that our customers are happy and we're happy. If we fail at that, then that's on us. And at the end of the day, the customer can go and get the best service from wherever it is they think they can find it.
So, of course, you partner and support farmers, but they are getting fewer and older.
Right.
So, how do you adapt your business model?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think sometimes we wonder about as we deploy technology, does it create more barriers or does it lower barriers? And that's especially a critical question in European agriculture, where, as you rightly said, the average age of a farmer continues to go up. For many farms that I visit, there's not a clear succession plan. There's not children or others that have been involved in the operations that now, desire to make that their life's work. And so how do we actually deal with that, given the criticality of food production for both human consumption, animal consumption, fuels, et cetera, et cetera. And so, for us, that is a really, really fundamental question. We're trying to design all of our systems to be as modular and scalable as possible. And so you can choose to engage with portions of the technology that help you and might help facilitate that transition over time. For example, some of the decision support tools that we've talked about on the basis of data. For example, some things like autonomy, where if you can't find significant enough support in the moment in the farm, if you have a time critical window and you don't have the labor that's needed or available, you can still get the work done at the right time and get the best outcome for yourself. The other thing that we've put a lot of effort into is what I call our retrofit strategy. We call it our precision upgrades team. And that team is designed to not just uh, or to ensure that that technology isn't just on brand new equipment that the biggest and sort of wealthiest, most successful farmers can buy, but it can go back onto a machine that might be 5, 10, 15, or more years old, so that they too can benefit from some of these precision ag technologies and continue to operate their farm under whatever their context is.
But what about for the younger, maybe the first gen farmer, the first generation farmers coming in? Smart equipment, well, that comes at a cost. Innovation, cost cutting innovation tends to have a hefty price tag. So, how do you encourage new players?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time, both ourselves and even more importantly, through our dealer networks, who are an incredibly important partner for us on the front lines, training customers, helping them understand how to use the technology the best. One thing that we have just started to use in Europe is something that we call our solutions as a service business model. Now, this is an interesting one because often it evokes a lot of passion on one side or the other. But what it boils down to is some of our cutting edge technology is available as a subscription on a subscription and annualized basis. Now, why are we doing that? On one hand, I think sometimes customers feel, I've already bought the piece of equipment. Shouldn't I, get the technology as well? But we found that we can provide the core equipment at a cost that is far cheaper than including all of the cost of the technology kit that sits on top of it, and then give customers the choice. Do they want to use that incremental technology kit or don't they? Now, for us, we've already invested in it. We've put it on the machine. It's just sitting there. We deeply want our customers to use it because we believe it's good for them and also because we want to return on our investment. And so we've built a team called a customer success organization. That customer success organization is tasked with looking consistently and across all of our equipment of, are our customers using the technology? Are they getting value for it or not? And that creates a really positive feedback loop as well. Because if we find that a customer isn't using the technology, that exits a trigger for us to go back to our organization and say, we thought this had great value. We thought that customers would really like it. For whatever reason, they're not using it. Do we need to make it simpler? Do we need to make it easier to use? Do we need to add more training? Do we need to change something more fundamental about the technology? And that loop helps us actually get people more comfortable and more confident in using it over time.
So you're saying there's real flexibility in the system, but can high-tech machinery really almost lower the capital entry barriers?
That's the idea. Now, I think ultimately matching when a customer pays us to when they get the value is the right way to think about the business. Just take the alternative. The alternative is there's a big capital bill up front, and then they hope that it works for them. They hope they get the right results out of it. Imagine as an individual farmer having to make that decision, especially in a time where economics may be tough like they are right now. You wouldn't want to. And so you would be hesitant. You would be potentially want to see others use it over time and so on. But if we can create a model where we've lowered the upfront price and then we've allowed the customer to have the choice of do they want to use that technology, presuming they will only use it if it creates value for them. They can do the math. Our farmers, our customers are extremely detail oriented, extremely intelligent. So I think if we lay that out as a clear choice and say, let's go back to See and Spray, if you think that you will get 60 or 70% savings from that, you can pencil the ROI in a single season for making the investment to use the technology.
It sounds like talking to your customers, you talked about training customers, is a really important part of this process because we might argue that high-tech equipment is also a barrier for the older farmer. I mean, how inclusive is the high tech for those that are older, not used to the digital revolution, and maybe very set in their ways? I
I,
might be stereotyping, but tell me because you're talking to farmers all the time.
Well, I mean, I think we find customers across all generations that will sometimes struggle with the technology. And for us, we need to take inspiration from products like Apple, where, I always talk to the teams about when I buy a new pair of AirPods, I simply open the case, my phone prompts and says, would you like to connect them? And I hit yes. And then it's done. It's simple, it's intuitive, and it's straightforward. And that's what we need to strive for. So regardless of the age of a customer, their familiarity with technology, it's a great experience that is seamless and makes it easy for them to make a decision.
Just tell me if you see any evidence to bear out the argument that high cost, high tech equipment means that there can be prohibitive entry barriers and it only leads to the consolidation of existing farms.
Well, here's what I think we do see. I think we see that when something is high cost and high tech, it's also somewhat high risk, almost inherently so. If you're forced to make an investment up front and it's complicated to use or it's challenging to get the right outcome from, it means that you may have made an investment and you may not get the value back. Now, for a big, very large farm, I visited some last week in the United Kingdom, actually. They can afford to make that investment, train people specifically on those tools, monitor them, and make sure they get the output. For a family farmer that might be working on several hundred hectares of land, it gets much more difficult. And I think what we ultimately see is we see that that slows down adoption of technology at the lower level of organizations. And then, if you believe the technology creates value, they're less competitive, which then naturally drives, the larger farms to be able to have more capital to reinvest and buy out smaller farms. And so I don't think it's the nature of the technology itself. I think it's the business model around the technology being very high cost and only accessible to some. And that's why through our retrofit program, through our solutions as a service model, and through all the training and investment, we are trying to make that technology as accessible to every customer as we can.
Well, as head of Europe, Africa, Asia, you've got great insights into the variation of international mentalities and approaches. So, how do you adapt the technology for the nature positive regulatory environment of Europe versus other continents where there is an emphasis on production first?
Yeah, great question. And one that's timely, especially with some of the trade deals that have been signed between South America and the EU. I think it's a really, really relevant question. Now, first, I would say that ultimately, uh, all of our customers, whether they're in South America or they're in Europe, they need to be competitive. And the consumer is going to have the ultimate say of what they value in terms of, I guess the nature positive elements versus the lower cost or sort of, more cheaper and more accessible elements. What we're trying to build is a technology stack that is works across both. And so it's very much a fungible, transversal technology stack that can be built globally, but then customized to work locally. If you think about the Operations Center documentation, where we put the weight of what we track is really up to each individual customer and to some extent up to each individual country. So a South American customer might be primarily interested in how they use the data, what data they store, how they use that data to drive lower cost and more efficiency in their operations. A European customer might have regulatory barriers that they need to document against and things they need to overcome. But the core of that system is the same and can actually be leveraged across both. That's our mentality. And I think that extends to AI and machine sensing and execution machines to autonomy and so on.
So, Justin, I know that you've been in your current role a few months, but you've been very much a part of this customer conversation that you've been building up, the retrofit ideas, and a lot of the business transformation. And of course, you have a management consultancy background. So, the pivot from selling machinery and the new iron to selling intelligence and software upgrades for existing fleets must be, well, it must be an intellectual, practical, financial, even a moral maze that you navigate. How do you see the business model pivot, especially when we're thinking about high interest rates and that
Yeah.
geopolitical volatility that we have now?
It's both complicated and simple, I might say. And why is it simple? Why would I say that? I would say that because ultimately we ask ourselves one question: what's the best thing to do for our customer? And if you keep that customer at the center of our thought process of the what we invest against, how we think about solutions, and that yes, how we go to market, how we monetize our investments, and so on and so forth, I think it really never leads you wrong. But what I think is fascinating about it is it also leads you to do some things we haven't done before. So, it's a tough transition for us as a company to think about things in a different way. We're 190 years old now. We have, a very long history of making really high quality equipment at large scale, working with our dealers to get it to our customers. And now we're saying, let's go and speak to customers that maybe we haven't met on their terms before with solutions that don't look like buying a brand new machine, but involve retrofitting, cameras or displays, into cabs that might be 15 or 20 or 30 years old. How do we actually do that? How do we reach those customers? How do we speak to them and communicate the value proposition for them? So there's a lot of work for us to do as we navigate that transition. But as long as we're doing the right thing for our customers and we're trying to help them be more productive and more profitable, we help them do more with less on both of those dimensions, I think we're going to be able to have a clear North Star.
Well, Justin, we're almost at the end of our podcast. And one final question then. You serve on the advisory committee for the World Food Programme's Innovation Accelerator. Well, innovation is something we talk about a lot at the forum. So, in looking at AI and redefining what's possible, what do you hope to say and gain and learn at the forum and hearing from your fellow panelists who are drawn from agri-tech and regenerative agriculture?
It's such an exciting time and it's such a dynamic conversation, isn't it? Feels like every day there's new things that are happening. What that means to me is I can't possibly know everything. And so I am constantly trying to understand from agri-tech companies, from companies that would even be classified as more, cutting edge core technology companies. What's different and how might we apply that to help our customers, to help our dealers, and ultimately to build a more competitive agricultural ecosystem in Europe. Ultimately, that's our mission. I think that we find good ideas everywhere. By the way, we participate and we fund, of course, not just FFA, but lots of other forums for startup incubators, for accelerators. We bring in companies each year, including every year some in Europe, that are doing things like satellite scanning or doing land mapping, things that you might not think of as synonymous with making green and yellow machines that go across fields, because we really think that there's a lot of transition and transformation happening, and we want to be the trusted party that our customers look to in the future to say, Deere can help us navigate that and ultimately can help us win.
Well, we look forward to hearing you at the forum. Enjoy it. And thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to another edition of the Food Systems Podcast, brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Please do join us again next time.